say it again. I think they should. For me, the keys to it, mental toughness is going to come into play. There's going to be potentially 3 games in 3 days. You're going to be away from the Dean Dome. You're going to be playing a lot of freshmen and things early in the season. So I think it's going to take some mental toughness. Start to get out in transition, as you alluded to a little bit, Josh. Let's get some boards and get them out and run and get some easy finishes at the rim, which will then hopefully open up the outside game. And, I know one thing that I'm looking forward to as an improvement from last year is the improved outside shooting. And we've talked a lot about all the options that we have to shoot. And I think if we can get into our transition game, get some easy buckets, and to start to dominate a little bit down low, that'll open up the outside. And hopefully, I know that we are far capable of shooting better than 4 for 18. So if we can knock down some threes, hit the shots that we should, and just play good, sound basketball, I think we're going to have a good shot to win it.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to kind of what I said when I was breaking down some of the other teams, I think the biggest thing that Carolina has to do is worry about themselves, like Josh said, what you can control. You got to take, these other teams, make them play your game. And that's going to be the biggest thing. And, last year when we saw them in their, holiday tournament, they did that. And it was similar to what you kind of talked about, which was you're going to play probably 3 different games. There'll be one game where you may be able to win inside. That'll probably be the game against UCLA. When you move on, if you have to play Stanford, that's a team that runs through the inside. They've got a lot of talent down there. They've got guys that can score down there. And then you're going to have the length of Zaire Williams, who is 6'8", is going to be playing at the small forward position. If you're playing Alabama, well, that might be a little bit of a different game. That's probably a game where you're still going to have to probably see your guards score a lot because that's a team that likes to shoot the outside shot a lot. John Petty, who killed Carolina last year, even though Carolina was able to win that game over Alabama, he is back and is going to play a significant role. A lot of their team from a year ago is back as well, outside of Tyra Lewis Jr. So those, that's the thing that Carolina has to realize, that when you get into this type of tournament setting, which is different than even when you get into the NCAA tournament, is you're going to have to find different ways to play. This isn't how you're going to function all year. Just because you play that way in the second game of the Maui Invitational, that's not where you're going to become for the whole season. But you have to be able to take care of the main things, the little things that you've been able to do, that you were able to do against the College of Charleston, and that you weren't able to do at times last year, which is holding on to the basketball, not turning it over, and being able to control the pace. And the other thing that Carolina's got to do, which was a little bit of a struggle early on in the game against College of Charleston, you've got to be able to win the glass. That's the thing that's going to make you most dominant in this tournament. There are some teams that have talent, but there aren't a lot of teams that have size in this tournament. The way that you're going to want to win these games is by dominating on the glass, rotating those big men inside to keep those guys fresh, and that'll allow you to have a big advantage in this tournament.
I think y'all both...
We're talking about, Alabama and Stanford and potentially Indiana or Texas. I fully expect us to beat UNLV, but I also expect a far better showing from them than they had against Montana State. I don't always love going to play an opponent after they're coming off an upset loss. There's a little extra fire and motivation to play considerably better basketball than the prior game. So, I think we got to take it game by game, focus on what we can, go out there, play with confidence, and move on.
I think
these and other teams that's caused Carolina problems in the past.
Yeah.
You remember that Carolina is not very successful against them, so they've got to take care of business in that game before we can even look ahead.
I think y'all both brought up 2 points that I failed to mention, that Carolina, while it's not pressing right now that they're not doing it well, they've, you want to see progress. The outside shooting, I think is something that, 4 for 18 can win you games against the College of Charleston. They go 4 of 18 in Asheville. They're probably not going to cut down the nets and win that event. And of course, when the schedule heats up in the ACC, that's not a recipe for success. I think they have the guys that can shoot the ball from three at a very high rate. And it was good seeing Kerwin Walton the first time he had a look to pull the ball and shoot the ball. But Andrew Platek can't go 1 for 5 with the looks he had in the game the other night. And then I think Anthony mentioned the rebounding. The rebounding numbers look great on the stat sheet when you look at the final, but they were tied at halftime with the College of Charleston, the rebounding department. And I can only imagine what was said in that locker room, because there's a lot of things that you can say is okay. That's not okay. You should never be tied with rebounding with the College of Charleston at halftime in any year, and no matter the setting, whether you're in their building, your building, empty fans, no fans, whatever. You should have handled the glass from word go. They didn't do that, so you've got to get to the point where they're imposing their will for 40 minutes. So I think that's the thing, is that you take away what you did the other night really well. You take what you did where you need to improve, and you can apply that in 3 straight games, and Carolina will have a chance to do that starting on Monday night in Asheville. So with that, guys, in conclusion, I asked you guys earlier if they win the event, does it make them a national title contender? We both kind of are hesitant to say that. So what is considered a successful trip to Asheville? Is if Carolina goes 2-1, is that okay? And Mark, I'll let you take that first.
For me, I mean, to define it right now, for me, a successful trip is winning it. And that's because going into it, again, we are the heavy favorite. We have the most talent. Is a 2-1 trip successful? It depends who you lose to and how you lose. If you play well, you compete, you still don't love it. I mean, it's North Carolina basketball. The expectation is you win. You definitely win versus the teams that you are better than. So for me, it's you win it and you use it as a stepping stone to move forward and, prepare for the ACC, because we know that's going to be a gauntlet.
Yeah, I think you kind of phrased it right there. Who you lose to, mainly what that team looks like during the tournament. Because again, as we said, we have no clue what any of these teams are. We don't even know what Carolina really is. I mean, if we're going to say that what we saw the other night in that game against College of Charleston is exactly what Carolina is, well then last year's team, if you just went off the opener, that was a team that probably could have been Final Four bound. They played that good. So it's hard to go in and say, okay, if they lose a game, then it's considered a failure. But it feels like, just while we're sitting here, that a successful trip would be going there and winning it, because you're looking at a field that on paper you're the best team hands down in. But again, we have to find out what a lot of these teams are. I think for Carolina, if you lose before you get to the final, that would be very disappointing. And I think, again, it just depends on who's on that other side. But the main thing that I think Carolina has to do in this tournament is to sort of, test that depth a little bit. Let's see which one of these guys can handle playing, who can handle playing significant roles, who can't. That's the question that we're going to ask as the season goes along. Can Colin Broughton be a guy that can contribute to the team? What about Puff Johnson? Where does Walker Kessler fit in down low in a rotation that is loaded? Some of the other guys, like R.J. Davis, like Caleb Love, like Day'Ron Sharp, they're going to have to be big players. I think, another thing for R.J. Davis, though, is, is this a guy that when we come out of this tournament, we're saying to ourselves, no matter what, even when Anthony Harris comes back, this dude is our starter. I think this tournament will give you a good idea of how you're feeling about the answer to that question. And the other thing that I think it's also going to show is when it comes to Andrew Platek, what exactly is his role going to be? How big is his role going to be? Is Roy Williams going to stick with playing him in a pretty significant role because he's a good defender? Can he keep that up? Or is he going to be a guy that you'll see his role dissipate as the season goes along? Those are the types of questions that you're hoping to answer about yourself in this tournament, which this year more than ever is focused on what do you do with the team.
Yeah, and I want to see Kerwin Walton knock down some threes. You know, Josh mentioned it earlier. He did not hesitate to shoot, which I have no problem with. He is a shooter. He needs to shoot. But I want to see him knock down some shots. He looked a little bit, I won't say timid, but he looked a little bit nervous, and his first few shots for sure were, tough misses, and I think he's capable of a far better showing than that. So, yeah, to get those answers, and, I'd say Platek played okay the other night. I know there was a lot of talk and chatter out there about he was plus 27 when being on the floor. I have a hard time buying into that as a direct result of him and his play and his performance. I still think that he needs to give Carolina the Wes Miller type role, play good defense, knock down some shots, and anything more than that is, more than we probably expected.
Yeah, no, I think Anthony made a pretty good point there. Pretty much saying that I think Carolina has a chance to really find out who they are this week. And that's really important because the sooner you start finding out who you are and what your identity is as a basketball team, the better, because you don't have 10 or 11 games before that ACC schedule starts to find out who you are. And I think Roy Williams won't be shy to find out and press the issue. He's going to play multiple lineups, but he's also there to win. And I think this tournament being in his hometown is a big deal to him. He's from the Asheville area. It's where he grew up, went to high school, got his first head coaching job, this, that, and the other. So it's going to be personal for him to put a good showing on for the people that, even though they're not going to be in the stands, it's still a hometown showing for him. And so I think you're going to see him start pushing the buttons because he doesn't really have a choice. You've got 27 games before the ACC tournament to figure out who you are, and the sooner you find out, the better. So with that, I got one last question for you guys, and I think Carolina's different options because you've got Caleb Love and you've got Garrison Brooks and Aaron Sharp. But what player will have the biggest impact on this team for those 3 games in Nashville next week?
I say it's Caleb Love. I think a lot of stuff starts and ends with him. For him distributing the ball, getting the offense going, creating open shots, and then bringing the energy on the defensive side, making some hustle plays out there. I think he's a player that the team can really feed off of him and how he can get them going. And everybody else, obviously has the role, but in a sense, I would say he is just a freshman, but it appears that he is going to play a leadership role on this team, and I think he'll have the biggest impact in Maui. And, the thing that we touched on that we still want to get going is the transition. And it starts with him. And so if he can get out, again, get some easy baskets, alleviate some pressure from some of the rest of the players, and set the tone for what the game is going to look like, I think that'll bode well for us.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to go with the other guy in the backcourt. I think it could be R.J. Davis. We saw how aggressive he was getting to the basket. I think that's something we're going to have to see for the majority of this tournament. I also think that we're going to have to see him be able to knock down some outside shots. And like I said a minute ago, this is where we're going to learn whether R.J. Davis is a guy that's going to be starting for this team going forward, or if they get Anthony Harris back, he's going to come in and take over for him. I think he will still play a significant role, but he probably knows that this is a chance for him to come out and prove himself. The pressure is on Caleb Love. The pressure's on Aaron Sharp. Not a lot of people are talking about R.J. Davis as much, and I think that helps him out, but we're going to learn a lot about him in this tournament. Can he come out and for 3 days sort of make a name for himself, play well? I'm not saying he's got to take over and lead the team in scoring all 3 games, but can he come out and put up consistent performances, start to knock down some shots from the outside, mainly just from the perimeter, and still be aggressive going to the basket? I think that's the most important thing, and he'll be the most important player for Carolina in this tournament.
Mark went Caleb Love. Anthony goes R.J. Davis. I'm going to take the easy way on. I think it's going to be Garrison Brooks. I think if Carolina's going to win 3 games in 3 days, if they're going to play at a high level, I think it starts through him. I think it starts with him. I think if you look at his stat sheet the other night, he was 3 of 10 from the field, only 6 points, 11 rebounds. I think he knows that can get you by the College of Charleston, but he knows he has to be better moving forward. And I think it's an adjustment period, though, where teams are now gearing up to stop him. They've had a whole offseason to kind of study film, try to find ways to take him away. So he's going to have to figure out new ways to get his points. But I still think he's this team's best player. He's the most important player, and I think he'll respond in a big way starting on Monday. in Nashville. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. Before I let you go, talk to you about the Heel Tough blog website. We are now recording this after the Notre Dame game has concluded, so we have you covered wire to wire from the Notre Dame game. Anthony has your recap. I have the stock report and the stock report all available on the Heel Tough blog website. Go check that out, and we're getting you ready for Maui with the podcast and then the preview article and then the recap article. With it being a tournament setting, there won't be individual recap games because they're going to play at weird times, and we all have jobs and lives, so it'll just be a tournament preview. And then when the tournament finally concludes, we'll have a tournament breakdown for what Carolina does